And
Fine.
Barry Lyndon
Enjoyed it.
isn't obviously Kubrick territory. Now, he did make Spartacus, which is one of the great studio films. So, yes, he has made historic movies, but generally, his own productions are very much more personal and relatively contemporary, or you could argue futuristic when you're looking at Clockwork Orange or 2001. So,
Hmm.
the first thing I would say more than anything is the Kubrick aesthetic. And you just sort of picked up on that. I found out just doing a little bit of reading on this, he got three Carl Zeiss 50 mm lenses
Hmm.
with an f-stop of 0.7, which means that it would allow in more light than was conceivable. So there is the scene with the candle lit dinner, not
Yeah.
a posh one,
Hmm.
but when Ryan O'Neill is being taken in by the German maid, and the only lighting is the candles on the table. Um, and at least in part, the aesthetic, the rationale for the art direction and the cinematography was to move away from studio productions with a huge amount of light and to say, let's make the 18th century look like the 18th century and only use natural lighting wherever possible. Okay, so went to extremes on that one.
Yeah, I
That's
think he does it very successfully. I think that was partly what pulled me into it. So very good, he makes. I think what with his films, they're also different, aren't they? And he seems to attack every film in an entirely different way. Like all the genres he goes into, and there doesn't seem to be a thread that keeps them all together, apart from Kubrick himself.
I think some critics have said Kubrick tried to make the best film in every genre. I'd take that back and say I think Kubrick wanted to make an impression and a statement in every genre. So his filmmaking is not constrained to. And Martin Scorsese, whose films I love, he said, look, I make a certain type of movie. And if it's gangsters or urban, he's very comfortable in doing that. But he has greater range as well. We know that. With Kubrick, arguably the best black comedy with Doctor Strangelove.
Hmm.
Arguably the best science fiction film with 2001 AD. Okay. The Shining. You make a horror movie in an incredibly large, well-lit space. So you work against all the genre types.
Hmm.
Okay.
Apart from
Um,
isolation.
yeah, well, you will know absolutely. I mean, it could be the cabin in the woods. It's just got
Yeah.
200 rooms. Yeah,
Yeah.
entirely understood. A Clockwork Orange, of course, he withdrew that from distribution after the initial concerns that it was going to spark violence. And that was his attempt at urban satire and commentary on modern Britain. And in the middle of all this, we have Barry Lyndon. It's a Thackeray novel. Again, just reading a little bit about it, he was thinking about making a Napoleon movie. And we've talked about Ridley Scott's attempt to make a Napoleon movie. And no, I still haven't watched the 4 hour version of that film.
Mhm.
And it was Dino De Laurentiis who just, said, okay, we don't have the funding. We're not going to make it. So he'd done a lot of 18th century background. My understanding is he was interested in another Thackeray novel which was Vanity Fair, which has been done a number of times, but there'd just been a very prestigious TV version of it, which is why I ended up on Barry Lyndon, which is not the obvious novel to make a major film on. Okay, that's the first thing. Secondly, a number of people said he's cast Ryan O'Neill to be an Irish rogue. Now, to be fair, I thought O'Neill did a very good job. Okay. Um, and
I think it adds to the movie.
yeah,
The star doesn't. He's not too much of a star, so you're thinking about him. So I think it's quite clever in a way.
yeah. But the other thing is watching it again, Leonard Rossiter picks up. For a British audience, that's Rigsby from Rising Damp and Reginald Perrin. So, a great TV comic actor, but he had a small part in 2001, and he has an early supporting role in Barry Lyndon, and he is very good. And in fact, just watching it in small roles, you have a number of prominent British actors really doing a terrific job moving that forward. It is very slow paced for a movie. And you said, well, you had a break. It was designed to be in two parts with an intermission. For any of you who have sat through any of James Cameron's Avatar movies, an intermission would be appreciated. Thank you very much, because 3 hours is too long. Okay. Okay. So that's another way of thinking about it. And I mean, again, just going back and looking at it, it's allowing the mannered prose of Thackeray to play out on the screen. Okay. Um, the salacious parts aren't very prominent. Um, the casting all the way through is terrific, but as you say, people whose names do not roll off your tongue. Hardy Kruger, people will know. Okay. What I had a little bit of difficulty rewatching it was the fact that Sir Michael Holden does the voiceover, the narration. Okay. It does it very well. It's splendid. Except he does almost exactly the same thing for the TV version of Paddington, which ran from 1976 to 1980, which was a terrific part of children's TV. But watching it again, it is that image that comes back in rather than what was, a knighted Shakespearean actor giving gravitas to the Thackeray's voice. Okay. So I actually think that in some respects, Warner Brothers, I think they were the producers, it didn't make as much money. Okay. It's not the obvious staff vehicle for Ryan O'Neill, although very credible. I'd also say there's a little bit there, and you can link it into The Beguiled, the Clint Eastwood movie. Okay. In terms of the fate of Barry Lyndon and, what it is to be emasculated, at the end, all that sort of thing. But um, one or two of the reviewers were less about the awards, which are, art direction, cinematography, song, and scoring, all won the Oscars, but more about how Kubrick got his actors to perform in these little vignettes which link together over a long, long time. Okay. So I think it's worth revisiting. There are few redeemable characters in that movie.
Mm,
Barry Lyndon has some plus points, but to a degree, he is an Irish rogue.
mm.
Okay.
So sorry, go back. Did you say that it wasn't successful at the box office?
It did not make as much money
Because it,
as Warner Brothers hoped. There's a difference between being financially successful
yeah, I agree.
and what the expectations are.
I agree, and I think it's one of those films that actually is a kind of a masterpiece on its own, and it wasn't really there. I can imagine he made it without caring too much about making money from it, which is why it's so good, probably. There was there's no, a producer or a marketing company wouldn't be able to go, well, can we do more of this or less of this? It's very much Kubrick's movie,
Yeah.
I think, which is,
And it's also been very influential.
mm,
Um, the break in trend
Mm.
is making the characters as small as possible with huge countryside
Yeah.
vistas at
Yeah.
various points in time.
Yeah.
That you made the point about natural lighting, the double images, the reflections or the axis points around bridges.
Mm.
Okay, so you're using the cinematic screen as a canvas,
Mm.
and that's
I
one
can't
point.
imagine a film like this being made now.
Um, Not in the same way. No, I think you're quite right. Not least of which because the big 18th century and 19th century novels seem to transfer better as miniseries with high production values.
Yes, yes, I imagine.
All right.
Could have been a
Um, the
series.
relatively recent version of Anna Karenina, which was sort of done in an interesting modern style, although clearly set in the 18th, 19th century,
Mm.
was just a little bit cold. And I thought
Yes.
beautifully filmed, but no, had no heart. Whereas Barry Lyndon, after a while, you
Yeah.
suddenly realize it's the faults of every
The
character.
charm. It's a real charm, isn't it?
Yeah, you know that. Um, I think if you go back and look at it now, you're thinking, well, that seems to be a little bit of a naive way of storytelling. Well, it's a Thackeray way of storytelling, and that generally stands up to inspection.
What's
So,
Thackeray?
sorry.
What's Thackeray? What do you mean?
Well, the author.
Ah, these
Makepeace
coming straight
Thackeray
from
was
the
the author. Yeah, was the author of the original material.
Ah, I see. Yeah.
So you get it through there, and that's where I think that the narration works in quite well.
Mm. Hmm.
You carry it forward,
Yeah.
but um, there are explosions of genuine emotion and regret in Barry Lyndon, um, for a generally unredeemed or poorly redeemed central character, a
Yeah.
deserter, a gambling cheat,
Mm.
a man who would marry for money. Um, all of those things seem reprehensible. Yet there are times where he does the right thing or shows genuine sorrow, particularly, at the death of his son.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that works through.
Well,
But you were
I'm
going to say,
thinking I might. I know they got a 4K restoration of this film, and it might be quite nice to have that.
oh yeah,
Watch it at home over a couple of evenings.
well yeah, but the other thing is, you know, you can see the film grain. If you're shooting
Mm.
at an f-stop of 0.7 with candles, with the best will in the world, you are not going to get, you're going to see that the nature of the material that you're recording on,
Mm.
okay, as much as you are going to get the image.
Yeah.
So that is where a painting style might be thought of as a background. And that's where it really is, most influential,
Yeah.
because if you are going to film vistas,
Mm.
Barry Lyndon rather, is a good starting point to learn how an expert does it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that works through there. But because um none of the actors, with
Mm.
the exception of Ryan O'Neill, who went back to playing Ryan O'Neill, really had a major carry on. You would argue that a little bit, certainly with Hardy Kruger. It's not as if it's the beginning of many people's cinematic careers.
Mm.
It is a piece on its own. And by the time we get to the next Kubrick movie, which is the Shining, it is a completely different cast. It is a completely different environment, um, and the continuity has gone.
And I'm just thinking, I think Full Metal Jacket just came to my head.
Mm.
I mean, just this crazy, the spectrum. I mean, he goes through with his movies.
And Full Metal Jacket. There's 12 years that passes until he does Eyes Wide Shut.
Mm.
So
His last one.
there's partly age,
Mm.
partly the nature of cinema, but also the investment in time.
Mm.
Um, he was also developing what became a AI.
Yeah, he was, and he
Okay,
half directed that, didn't he?
that's right. And Spielberg went and filmed it, and of course, it's a very different film.
Yeah. That's interesting how that changed. Yeah, I wonder how that would have been a bit of a different film if Kubrick had done it.
Yeah. But overall, um, you can. I think you're probably right. You would watch Barry Lyndon over 2 nights because the interval makes the break between his charming ascendancy as a rogue
Mm.
and then a more hard-bitten and cynical adult who is about playing the game of 18th century society.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and have a cup of tea as well, with some
Yeah, yeah.
cookies and shortbread by the side.
He's okay.